Pitt plays perfect teams pretty tough. Will FSU face a familiar fate? What is the biggest coverage? Footballologists have long debated this question. Clearly, cover 1 is bigger than cover 0, and cover 2 is bigger than the both. Along the same line of thinking, you get cover 3 and then cover 4, and that seems to be the end of the line. Well, until you hear of this thing called cover 6. But let me tell you that cover 6 isn't even a real thing. It's really just cover 3 in a trench coat. No, the biggest coverage is clearly cover 4, and the person who's the biggest advocate of the largest coverage in football is Pitt's head coach, Pat Narduzzi. In fact, they're the only team to run it on over 50% of their snaps in all of college football. Not all cover 4 is made the same, and Narduzzi's version has its own flair, so let's take a closer look at how he runs it. Cover 4 simply implies that there are 4 deep defenders. What you then do with the underneath defenders kind of falls into some distinct coverage families. Firstly, you could play man underneath, but then you'd only have 2 rushers, so that's less than ideal. You can also run a spot drop zone, which has all of the players spread out to distinct landmarks across the field. But this feels a little unsophisticated for elite football minds like ourselves. Let's leave these country zones for the unsophisticated backwater schools. So if you can't play man and don't want to just cover grass, what can you do? This is where match coverages come into play. These allow players to match the routes after they've declared. There are 2 different flavors of match coverage. The first is match man. Think Nick Saban or even FSU's own Adam Fuller. These coverages have hard set rules. Every player starts in man coverage and then has some if-then statements built in to explain when they have to switch men. Here's an example. Against this quads look, a Sabanite might call a play called stump. In stump, this outside linebacker would essentially have the flat. But since they really don't want him covering space, the rule would sound more like he has the number 2 receiver, or the second receiver from the outside, in man coverage unless he went inside, or number 3 ran outside, or he got an undercall from the corner telling him that number 1 ran a short route. You follow that? Yeah, probably not. The pros and cons of these coverages should be pretty obvious. If you pull it off, you have tight man coverage that molds the play the offense is running. But these rules are complicated and require a lot of communication. Plus, they take that backer out of the run fits. Since he's so focused on his man, it makes it really hard for him to peel off and play the run. What Narduzzi opts to do instead is kind of find the middle between zone and match man coverages. This middle ground is called match zone. Let's look at an example. Again, this outside backer has the flats. But instead of starting with a man concept, i.e. man the number 2 unless type rules like you see in match man, he has an area like you'd have in a country zone. However, they want him covering space as little as possible. So after he zones off, he carries the first person to show in man-like coverage. Practically, this acts almost identically to the above-mentioned match man coverage. But there are some key differences. One, defenders rarely carry their man outside of their zone. So you'll rarely see a linebacker carry a receiver down the field or across the field on crossing routes. That could be a good thing or a bad thing, as it restricts coverage options, but also means you're less likely to be placed in a bad matchup. It also allows some flexibility to these linebackers. They can do things like bring a linebacker on a blitz and stay in cover 4, which would be harder to do in Saban's system. If you wanted to do something similar, they would probably have to adjust to a cover 1 coverage. In fact, Pitt this year has the 3rd most blitzes out of cover 4 in the country, according to PFF. Narduzzi's cover 4 is pretty unique in how much it involves its linebackers in the run fits. Cover 4 usually indicates that a team is devoting more resources to stopping the pass than the run. That's simply because, when compared to a coverage like cover 3, they have to take a safety out of the box to get to 2 deep. Pitt gets around this by replacing that number with an outside backer or nickel player, and since he never has to carry anyone deep in cover 4, he's free to be more aggressive in the run fits. That means that these linebackers, while still having match tendencies, can still get caught in space pretty easily, especially on RPOs like this one. The upshot of all of this is that these safeties and corners are effectively in man coverage on any route past about 10 yards, and since they're coming from depth, most teams have some success hitting them on out routes. Or, if they have the athletes like FSU does, they can simply challenge them over the top. They do have some cool ways around these problems, like this play where they're playing what's called read coverage, where this backside safety actually has his eyes front side, which allows the front side safety to be aggressive on this little out route and almost nets a pick for the backside safety who's looking to double team any crossing route. But ultimately, no matter what games they play with the safeties, the aggressiveness of that outside linebacker means they're primarily a run-stopping team. This bears out in the stats. Narduzzi's teams are consistently better at stopping the run compared to stopping the pass. This year is a perfect example. They're 123rd in yards per attempt allowed and 25th in yards per rush allowed. I do have to add that Narduzzi's not exactly unique. Other teams do play match zone, but when they do, it's typically out of a cover 3 look. When teams do play match man cover 4, you may ask what they do instead of having an aggressive outside linebacker to play the run. Well, to be honest, they can stop the run without him. So, yeah. But that's not really an option for most teams. However, despite firmly falling in the category of most teams in terms of overall recruiting rankings, Narduzzi consistently has Pitt punching above their weight class in terms of defensive output. Even now in a down season, they're ranked as the number 40 defense in the country according to F+. Teams like that can potentially be dangerous to good teams. Louisville has already stumbled to this Pitt team, and a lot of that has to do with this tricky cover 4 that the Panthers run as well as anyone in the country. Thanks for watching. I hope this was informative. Pitt fans, let me know if I missed anything about Narduzzi's famous cover 4 in the comments below. And FSU fans, please like and subscribe, and I'll meet you over on Noles 247. We'll be furthering the conversation. Thanks.